My name is Jason Stabinskas. I'm the Managing Director of Cerros Limited, an ASX-listed company entirely focused on the Mid-Colca porphyry belt of Colombia. Throughout this presentation, I'll be making forward-looking statements, and any exploration results I mention have been previously announced to the market, and I refer you to our releases on our website or on the ASX platform for further detail and relevant disclaimers. On the back of recent drilling success and a successful capital raise, the company is now in a very robust position with $10 million in the bank and 3 drill rigs running, delivering significant news flow over the rest of this year and well into 2021. And you can see that those drill results and the anticipation of further news flow reflected in our share price movements over the last 3 months. And the massive volumes of trading that we've seen recently. Now, as I mentioned before, the company is entirely focused on the Mid-Colca porphyry belt of Colombia, and we hold dominant positions in 2 districts. Firstly, the Andes project, or the Andes portfolio, which is a very large portfolio but fairly early stage projects. Lots of opportunity, but as I said, early stage. And we have the Chinchilla project, which is in Reserelda, and that's a far more advanced project. That's anchored, if you like, to the Miraflores definitive feasibility study, which was generated in 2017. And that kind of forms the central hub, if you like, of a cluster of porphyry targets and epithermal targets as well. In the north, there are projects such as Dos Quebradas, Santa Sofia, Los Loma, and a few other early stage targets that need further development. But the main projects are Miraflores, and then to the east, some less than 1 kilometre, is Tesorito, which is the source of the recent drilling announcements and success. And then to the south, about 1.5 kilometres, 2 kilometres, is the Chuscal targets, which were drilled earlier in the year, and we're currently drilling there again. But the anchor, as I said, is the DFS linked to Miraflores. And at $1,400 an ounce, the economics of that project are fairly appealing. And of course, at $1,900 an ounce, they're far better. So let's focus now on the Chinchilla district and the recent developments at Tesorito. There are 2 zones of interest at Tesorito. There's the northern target, which we know little about, and I'll come back to that in a minute. And there's the southern target, which was the subject of historic drilling. There were 7 drill holes drilled in the southern target by previous management, and we have recent drill results from this target that have significantly increased our understanding of the structure of the southern porphyry target, and it was no doubt a catalyst in our significant share price momentum of late. Tesorito South is a near-surface porphyry, and from historic drilling hole 2 generated 384 metres at a gram per tonne essentially from surface, and that encountered elevated copper near the end of the hole, some 35 metres at 0.2%. Copper. Now, at the time, we thought that was unremarkable, but in the context of the recent drill results, it does become more meaningful, and I'll come back to that in a second. Hole 7, 253 metres at a gram per tonne from surface, and what's interesting about hole 7, and again, this is a historic hole, was that was drilled perpendicular to hole 2, so we had 384 metres in one direction, and perpendicular to that, 253 metres, and so that gives you a hint of potential volume of this southern porphyry target. The first hole of this current program, hole 8, was parallel to hole 7, and that generated 230 metres at a gram per tonne, essentially from surface as well. And that's further consolidated the indications of material volumes in this region. 2 other developments came out of hole 8 that are quite interesting. First of all, we hit 18 metres at 2 grams per tonne from surface. Now that's with a higher grade 6 metre zone at grading 4 grams per tonne. That's particularly interesting because just 500 metres or so away from Tesorito is the Miraflores proposed plant site. So the potential for near surface, easily accessible, better grade material to feed into the Miraflores DFS is quite appealing. And the third development coming out of hole 8 was the presence of bornite. Now, bornite is a copper mineral. It hosts a significant amount of copper in its molecular structure. And it usually occurs near the centre or very hot parts of the porphyry. Now, I'm not suggesting the amount of bornite we hit was economic. That's not the case, but it does bode very well for the potential for copper at depth in this porphyry target. So we look forward to exploring that in further detail as we go forward. Just this week, we announced 2 more holes from Tesorito South. Hole 10 was very illuminating as it revealed the major controlling structure of the region is the north-south oriented Mamoto fault corridor. And you can see that as the grey oblique structure in the image. And we also encountered the porphyry suite near the surface of hole 10, about 70 metres further east of hole 8, suggesting we have further potential for increases in near surface mineralisation somewhere between holes 8 and holes 10. Hole 11 delivered another brilliant intercept of 262 metres from surface, grading at 0.84 gram per tonne, and a higher grade zone within that of 66 metres at 1.3 grams per tonne from 132 metres. It's exactly where we would expect that to be based on the results of the other holes in the area. Hole 11 was drilled in the opposite direction to hole 2 and again hit the north-south Mamoto contact at depth. The drill pad itself was about 100 metres to the west of hole 7, so again adding a boost to the potential volume in a westerly direction. The southern porphyry remains open in many directions, but of most interest is the deeper extensions westward and also pursuing the potential source of the elevated copper and then the bornite we saw in holes 2 and holes 8. And also to the north, in line with the northern porphyry target. So let's now talk about that northern target. Up until 2020, the northern anomaly of Tesorito was relatively unknown. There was a few surface data points there, but that's about it. We conducted systematic surface sampling of the area and mapping, and that revealed anomalous moly, anomalous gold, and there was a magnetic high at depth. So we've drilled our first hole into the northern anomaly, and we got 360 metres at 0.4 gram per tonne. We didn't hit the porphyry in that hole, but that's a pretty encouraging result to know that there's gold in the broader system in the north there. But also we saw textures and mineralisation at depth in that hole that suggested we passed a heat source of some sort, probably a causative porphyry. And so we're drilling there now, further holes into the northern targets to better understand and to hopefully zero in on a northern porphyry. So that's the Tesorito project. Southern anomaly fairly well advanced, very encouraging start, and we'll certainly be drilling continuously at the southern target and the northern target for the rest of this year and heading into 2021. So now let's move down south to Chuscal. The Chuscal group of licenses were originally held by Anglo Gold Ashanti, and we formed a joint venture with Anglo Gold to advance those projects. Then more recently we announced that the joint venture was converted to Los Cerros owning 100% of Chuscal and Anglo Gold Ashanti becoming a shareholder of Los Cerros in exchange. The first drilling program ever conducted at Chuscal was completed in January of this year, and the results were very interesting. We intercepted very wide zones of porphyry-associated mineralisation. Now, we know it's porphyry-associated as opposed to hitting the porphyry directly because we see this low-grade disseminated gold associated with signature elements attributable to a porphyry, such as elevated molybdenum. So we intercepted 350 metres at 0.57 gram per tonne, 320 metres at 0.43 gram per tonne gold, and a few others in the other drill holes of this background disseminated gold. And then occasionally the drilling program would also intercept these overprinting ISS veins or epithermal veins overprinting this background gold, and we'd see a boost in the grade accordingly. So 2 metres at 6.44 gram per tonne gold and 87 grams per tonne silver, 2 metres at 8.28 grams per tonne gold, and so on. Drilling is currently underway at Chuscal, so we have a rig at Chuscal and a rig at Tesorito. The Chuscal drilling program is mainly focused on shallow drilling and gathering critical information to understand or better understand the structure of Chuscal so that we can vector into the porphyry or porphyries that are the engine of all this mineralisation we see at Truscal and this very extensive surface footprint. Now, I want to briefly talk about some work we did with Fathom Geophysics. Fathom take the Truscal data and they apply it to the Yerington Porphyry in the US. Now, the Yerington Porphyry is very well known and is essentially a reference or a standard for porphyry mineralisation and porphyry zonation for other porphyries around the world. So they take the Truscal data and they plot that data as if it was Yerington and see, based on that information, where the Yerington Porphyry core would be if Truscal was a Yerington. And the net result of all this is a probability shape of where that core might be at Truscal. So it's a very interesting exercise, and we look forward to drilling that target in this drilling program. You can see that target in the bottom right-hand side. There's a yellow circle in that cross-section, and that's what the Fathom Geophysics exercise generated for us. So we'll be hopefully drilling that into Q1 of next year. As I mentioned before, the Quinchía project foundation is the Miraflores deposit. This is kind of central to the discoveries of the area and is an advanced project with a DFS in place and advancing quite well in terms of approvals and similar. The resource at Miraflores is 9.27 million tonne, grading 2.82 gram per tonne gold and 2.77 gram per tonne silver for 840,000 ounces of gold and a similar amount of silver. The reserve is 4.3 million tonne, grading 3.3 grams per tonne on a capex of 72 million, and I'll show you some performance metrics on the DFS shortly. So within that mineral resource are two zones of Miraflores of particular interest, and we explored these further earlier in the year when COVID prevented us from being more active in the field. So we went back and visited the geological model for Miraflores, and that revealed two interesting aspects to the distribution of mineralisation in the area. Firstly, there's a subset of the mineralised breccia called the white-grey breccia that tends to carry higher grade material than the rest. So we've designed a drilling program to pursue extensions or potential extensions to that grey-white breccia element. And the second is higher grade intercepts historically tend to be associated with an ore shoot. So this is an area where two sheeted veins cross, creating a shoot of higher grade material. And in particular, there's one shoot called the 800-220 vein shoot. And if you look at the historical results, and there's a few reported in the slide there, many of those are associated with that particular shoot, the 800-220 shoot, such as 6 meters at 11, 10.6 meters at 11.9, and so on. Now, we've just recently announced that we've returned to drilling at Miraflores, and that program, it's a series of short holes, 4 to 6 holes, pursuing that potential extensions to that ore shoot and the white-grey breccia. So that program should start in November. The rig is currently being commissioned and a target date of November drilling. The Miraflores DFS was modelled on $1,300 US an ounce for gold and an upper sensitivity analysis of $1,400 US. And you can see at $1,400 an ounce, the NPV at 8% is some 90 million, internal rate of return is 28% and a payback of 3.3 years. Of course, gold price is much stronger now than it was when this model was generated, sort of hovering around $1,900 an ounce. So one would expect the metrics of Miraflores to be even more appealing now. So we look forward to developing this story further. It's one part of a broader strategy that the company has, that being developing or near-term development opportunities through the realisation of the Miraflores DFS and potentially leveraging near-surface gold that we might encounter in Tesorito or Truscal, or some of the earlier stage discoveries in the north of our portfolio in the Quinchía district. So that's what we call the top-up strategy, developing additional feed that could lead into a modest-scale production based on the DFS for Miraflores, and using the DFS plant location and plant design as a hub, if you like, being fed by the spokes of several discoveries in the area. So we call that the top-up strategy. The second focus is the much larger chasing of the porphyries in the area. And as I said, Tesorito is a near surface porphyry, and we're getting a handle on the geometry of the Tesorito discovery. And Chuscal earlier stage, but given the surface footprint of the anomalism in the area, has the potential to be a very significant discovery as well. So 2 elements to the strategy: building the top up for the Miraflores feasibility, and chasing the porphyries. Now, there is a third element to this, and this is developing the project pipeline for the company as a whole. So I mentioned we have further discoveries in the north of the Quinchilla portfolio, early stage, Dos Quebradas, Santa Sofia, and a few others up there. So we'll look forward to developing those and a few other potential targets in the area and bringing those into that project pipeline. And then, of course, we have the Andes portfolio, which is by much larger than the Quinchilla portfolio, many times larger, but very early stage. And we've taken 14,000 surface samples across the Andes portfolio, and 2% of those soils are over a gram per tonne. So that gives you an idea of how significant or how much potential there is in the Andes portfolio. We plan on heading to the Andes ground and progressing that significantly in 2021. But at the moment, our focus is on the Quinchilla project, where we have the 3 drill rigs running. Now, let me briefly talk about that. We have 2 rigs that have been going for quite a while now on the Quinchilla project, and they are just typical service provider rig drilling arrangements. But what we committed to several months ago is to purchase our own rig. So that rig has arrived. It's being reassembled. It had to be disassembled to be shipped into Colombia. It's an Atlas Copco C5C diamond drill rig, track mounted. And the tracks had to be reassembled because it wouldn't fit into the container. I want to briefly talk about the company's CSR, corporate social responsibility. We place a priority importance on our role in the local community, and we have an overarching policy of buy local, hire local, train local, employ local where we can. And that's reflected in the composition of our team. We have more than 60 people working for the company at the moment, and the vast majority of those come from local towns like Quinchilla. We also have a presence in Medellin as well. And in fact, I'm the only employee that's not Colombian and not in Colombia. We also, wherever we can, buy from local suppliers such as equipment, hardware, those sorts of things, and local catering and similar. We have a dedicated team focused on community engagement and community programs, and they're not just focused on our core business. We have lots of agricultural programs and similar to support the local community. So we're very much an integral part in the local economy and the local community. And with our current level of activity, we plan to play a significant role going forward as well. So to sum up, we're entirely focused on the Mid-Colca porphyry belt. We have a dominant position in 2 districts of the Mid-Colca. And with these recent exploration success and funding, we've got very significant momentum at the moment with 3 drill rigs running across 3 projects and, of course, many early stage targets to pursue as well. So I hope you watch with interest through 2021 in what's bound to be a very exciting year for Los Cerros. And thank you for your time.